I'm Curtis Nauman, and I'm going to be discussing the Leibniz, fine-tuning, and moral arguments for the existence of God. The Leibniz argument starts off with the premise that everything that exists has an explanation for its existence. The second premise is that if the universe exists, its explanation is God. And the third premise is the universe exists. From 1 and 3, we can find the conclusion that if the universe exists, its explanation, it has an explanation. And from 2 and 4, we can conclude that because the universe exists and it has an explanation, its explanation must be God. And in defense of these, first off, defining everything having an explanation for its existence, the key factor is things that necessarily exist. Craig makes the argument that God necessarily exists because without a beginning, without something to start everything in motion, nothing could exist. And atheists try to tear this down or say that the universe exists necessarily, which is invalid because the universe could have taken a different route, and also it doesn't make logical sense to say that something came out of nothing. As for the second, there is no other explanation that has been made that explains the beginning of creation, the beginning of the universe. So, based on TOE, the theory of everything, we are still left with no valid explanation other than God. As for the third premise, it's pretty obvious that the universe exists since it's within our scope of senses to realize that what's around us is real, and without that we are kind of left in complete and utter state of confusion, because if we don't exist, then how does anything make any sense at that point? 4 is a logical conclusion, as well as 5, so without denying the first 3 premises, we are left with the argument that God is the only explanation for the universe, therefore God exists. The fine-tuning argument is based off of nature's constants and the arbitrary quantities of our universe. The natural constants, including things like gravity, weak force, strong force, and other laws that govern nature, are what make up our universe, what cause it to be the way it is. And arbitrary quantities such as the current amount of time, around 10 to the 17th power seconds, and the number of subatomic molecules within the entire universe being around 10 to the 80th power, we began to see the vastness of our world. And the natural constants are based on those arbitrary quantities. And the amazing thing is the amount of fine-tuning it requires to create a world in which life can exist. The small window in which this is possible has a lot of numbers that, if they were off even by 1 part in several million, 1 part in 10 to the 60th even for some, life would not exist on Earth as it is currently seen. This goes on to build onto the premises of fine-tuning, which are that the universe exists due to either design, physical necessity, or pure chance. This being said, the design option is based on the concept that there is a designer, there is some unembodied, all-powerful mind behind all of creation. The physical necessity is kind of an implausible choice. It draws on the idea that it is necessary for life to exist, that the universe is designed in a way in which life had to exist. But that begs a question: why does life need to exist for the universe to exist? It's a logical fallacy, and it doesn't hold up, and it becomes a very illogical choice. And then chance itself, the chance of the exact values being in place are so small. Even getting the thermodynamic force to be correct is like 10 to the 10th power to the 123rd power, and so many others are in those same ranges, and the chance of all of them being the way they are, and being within the set of values that are required for life is so insignificant that it seems highly and unlikely that it could happen. It seems that it would require an infinite amount of chance creations of worlds based on pure chance itself, of everything starting from nothing. This leads to the multiverse theory, which says that there are infinite number of universes, which satisfies the chance creation of life. And with this in mind, we can see why someone might believe that there is a possibility that life existed by chance. But that begs the question of how the multiverse started to begin with, and how it was able to take care of all of the constants and have an infinite number of ways that it can be put together, because that also requires a design to hit every single point, when there are almost an infinite number of combinations. And why did it choose as the multiverse to have one of every combination or several of every combination? So with that in mind, it seems kind of unlikely that chance is the reason that life exists, leaving design to be the obvious winner, based on logic here. The moral argument starts off with the premise that if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. The second premise is that objective moral values and duties do exist, and the third premise is that therefore God exists. As we go into this, we are brought with the questions of Is God required for objective moral values? That being said, objective means that it is based on something other than humanity, and not subjective, which is based on humans' choices and decisions on what is and isn't right. If humanity made up its system of morals, then it would only be subjective. And if they were objective, where did they come from? How did nature form objective morals? And how can we be sure that we didn't simply make them up? And the second premise, that they do exist, is hard to deny. There are some attempts to deny it, but it is very obvious that we have the natural desire to do things that we see, that we know and feel are good and right, and we have duties, and some things are above us and have been set in place from the beginning. And if they were only subjective, then why would we continue to follow them? What keeps them in place? And the last one is that God exists because there are objective morals, and this is a logical conclusion of the former two statements.